my biggest interest is helping and supporting other people become more free in their life. And the freedom that I'm really talking about is really being free within themselves.
It
Yeah,
just makes
yeah.
it easier.
I thought about
Um,
that. Yeah, I thought
yeah.
that that's what's happening.
But I mean, thank you so much for agreeing to come back. I'm really happy you're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such an honor. It's such a pleasure. And um, yeah, like I mentioned, I listened to the first episode that we did together, and um, yeah, almost a year has been passed since then, and it's
It's
just been
no, it's been
wild.
more than a year.
It's been more than a year. All right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it was
So
December 2020.
right. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so much has happened since then.
Hmm.
It's just yeah, to me it's like surreal in many ways how so much has changed. And when I explore as well the understanding I had about life and what I was doing and everything, it's still very similar, but there is
Hmm.
so much more depth to the experience now and what I know, and as well how I show up in life. And so yeah, that's brought in yeah so much more of a layer of depth into my life.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's been super interesting.
That's good to hear. And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because, well, one thing for myself was I feel like a lot of people like your episode I loved, but I feel just for my own, I guess, critic
Hmm.
is I feel like it didn't have the quality it deserved because it was
Right.
one of the first ones that I did.
Yeah.
But it's still like I'm still really proud of that episode and I loved that conversation that we had.
Hmm.
And yeah, another reason is I think it's interesting to see how much of someone's life can change in so little time because and a year is an interesting amount of time because it is so long, but at the same time it goes by so quickly.
Yeah, I very much agree with that.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about kind of how you started on everything. So,
Right.
yeah, I would assume like a lot of it would still be the same because you were still kind of starting on this journey that you're so deep into now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say the path that I was on is still the same path,
Hmm.
but in so many ways, it just feels like I've gone, deeper on that path. I've taken a few more steps. It's like, let's say we're walking up a mountain, it's just, I see that there's been some footsteps that have been taken. I see kind of the path behind me, and I see as well a bit more of an elevation, just going up this mountain. And so for me, there is such a deeper understanding of the human experience. And as well,
Mm.
yeah, I recall as well mentioning that one of my biggest desires, one of my biggest missions in life is to really support others in discovering more freedom in their lives. And, the freedom that I'm really talking about in so many ways is that inner freedom, the inner recognition that, that we are whole, and as well that there is nothing missing in our lives, and as well just that deeper recognition of who we really are,
Hmm.
and as well just living continuously from that place.
Yeah, you actually just answered what I was about to ask you
Hmm.
because or your first episode, that was your
Hmm.
answer to the question of your biggest passion was helping and supporting others feel more free in their life and more free within themselves. And
Right.
so I was wondering if I were to ask you that question right now, would that answer still be the same or how would it differ? So it would mostly be the same then?
It would be the same, but there's a deeper understanding to it now.
Mm.
um as well, something that you're aware of as well is that, apart from coaching, I'm now as well a breathwork practitioner and
Hmm.
facilitator. So meaning I support breathwork journeys, breathwork sessions. And, I don't know how much you know about breathwork. I don't know how much your, community knows about breathwork, but it's a very powerful modality to actually create change um, in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the deeper understanding that I've really discovered for myself is that quality of regulating our nervous systems, right? So this is something I can go into if you'd like. I can geek out a little bit on that, just as an understanding of it.
Yeah, but actually I'm
Just
curious first though is
sure.
how or what made you get into that aspect of things?
Okay. Well, yeah, that's an interesting story in the sense that I first of all, I never thought about doing
Mm-hmm.
breath work. I recall before getting to Bali, I was listening to a few podcasts from Aubrey Marcus podcast, and he was sharing how um, they were doing some breathwork sessions, and it was literally like a psychedelic experience.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was it was so intriguing and it was so interesting. It's like, what? Like,
Yeah.
there's no way that you can actually get to this space of deep, deep psychedelic trance-like states
Mm-hmm.
just through the breath.
Yeah, I've seen those videos
And
too.
yeah, and I can tell you, yes, like you definitely can. And it was interesting. When I came to Bali, I was reaching out to one of the breathwork practitioners there. It was actually not about breathwork at all. It was much more of a curiosity of doing more men's work because I know as well this, you know, practitioner. His name was Edward Dangerfield. He's my teacher now in many ways. He has guided me through this training that I've gone under, and um, yeah, so for me, the exploration with him was much more around, yeah, wanting to be part of his men's circle and as well, deepening that work.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just mentioned to me, why don't you just come to a breathwork session? And so when I did that, I dropped into the space, we went on the journey and, you breathe for 60 to 75 minutes. So that's
An
pretty
hour?
damn long time. Yeah, over an hour.
Jesus. Because I've actually
Over,
done it and I've done like,
yeah,
well, I don't know, 10 minutes, something like, and that's
right.
probably the most I've ever done.
Well, it's super interesting when you go longer than that, when you go deeper, when you have a connected breath. So, meaning you don't have any pauses in the holds that we usually have in our breathing. So, in our day-to-day lives, when we breathe, we inhale and then we have a pause or hold in between, we exhale and then we have another pause or hold in between,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there is kind of like four parts to this breath. When you take out these pauses and you just loop the breath and you just keep connecting it, in so many ways, yeah, first of all, our brainwave state, the blood chemistry in our body changes. And so with that, we literally get into this non-ordinary state of consciousness, which is very similar to a psychedelic experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, it's the profundity of it is that it's the direct gateway to the subconscious mind, right? The breath is
Mm.
the gateway between conscious and the subconscious mind. And, if you may have heard as well that, um, 95% of our actions, our feelings, our thoughts are governed by the subconscious mind,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of like the information I went into this experience, right? So I dropped into the breath, I dropped into the journey, and 20 minutes I went into it, and I noticed as well there was a lot of energy moving, and then I just eventually just burst out crying. Like there was so much deep grief, and I
Wow.
just felt my heart. It was wild. Like it was like for me, it felt like it was a deep, deep traumatic experience that I
Mm-hmm.
was going through in that moment. And I recall in that moment, actually, I remember in our first experience together, in our first podcast that we did, I mentioned to you that one moment where I felt abandoned for the first time by my mother.
Yeah, I remember
It was
talking
my
about that.
first day in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first day in kindergarten, right? And I thought, I'm never going to see my mother again,
Yeah.
right? So in that experience, in my breathwork journey, I went into that experience.
Whoa,
I
that's
felt,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Like I felt that. I felt the deep hurt. I felt the deep abandonment. I felt the deep feeling of unworthiness that I had, and this feeling of not being good enough, and as well how my life literally adapted because of that experience. I became a perfectionist. I became an overachiever. I thought I needed to do so much just to be loved,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in that moment, it was like I could rewrite the story, right? So we had all these breathwork practitioners who were supporting me in that session, in that experience. They were holding me. They were giving me words of affirmation. They were giving me physical touch in that moment. And so with that, I could rewrite the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked out of that experience and I was literally a new man. It was like a veil has been lifted and I felt like I was seeing for the first time again. Like the colors were different, life was different, I was thinking differently. It was just fucking wild. And I was like, okay, I got to continue this.
Holy shit, that's crazy. Cause okay, so I've like kind of dabbled in it myself. Cause
Right,
I watch a lot of Wim Hof videos. And so
right.
I do a lot of like his guided breath work things. And so I've
Yes,
experienced that like weird trippy sensation you're talking about. But I think maybe because I've only kind of very lightly touched on it, I have not gone that deep into it. And it's also interesting to me that you remember this
right.
because I've seen videos of people diving that deep into it and like either laughing or crying or like having these
Mm, yeah,
involuntary movements, but they don't remember when they come
exactly.
to.
That's exactly it. Yeah, because one is directly connected to the subconscious mind. The mind is actually not present, it's not active,
Mm,
right? And it's actually much more the body expressing itself. It's these emotions, these involuntary actions are just emerging from the body,
mm,
right? There's this book that's called The Body Keeps the Score, right? We actually, through our life, through the events that we experience, we literally store certain experiences. We store certain responses that we had to those events in the past in our body,
mm,
right?
mm,
And so let's say we have a really traumatic experience. Let's say we have a really, really painful experience. The body remembers that
mm,
experience. And so anything that is closely connected to that experience, the body is going to be like, oh, nope, don't go fucking, like, don't go there.
yeah.
Right. And it's like we adapt. We learn to mold ourselves to the experience so we don't necessarily have to feel pain.
So it's like
Like human
protecting
beings are
itself.
really great. Exactly. Yeah, human beings are really great at avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
right? But with that, we don't allow the fullness of the experience of life. We don't allow ourselves to be fully as we are,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we have to allow all experiences. We have to allow the spectrum of all emotions to be truly who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? So in those experiences, this is the beauty that I find in breath work. When that stuff emerges, when these experiences that we had that we couldn't fully process and that the mind has filtered out, when they come to the surface, when we feel them, the body doesn't require to remember them anymore. We don't need to protect ourselves anymore. And so it's like we literally walk out of that experience and we can live a new life.
That is so interesting. Man, that's wild. And so, was it after that experience you had that you were like, I want to get into this? I want to do this for other people now?
I mean, well, that was definitely not the intention at the
Yeah.
beginning. I was like, I just want more of this. I
Oh,
just want
okay.
to continue doing this. Right. So I went there every week. I had all these breathwork sessions and I didn't even know that, there is going to be training that's coming up.
Mm,
Right. And then one day I was just going for a walk and then Edward, he met me and it was just like synchronicities happening. And like because they like all his spaces are usually booked out. Like, this is like a really high
yeah.
demand stuff, right? And then he just mentioned to me here, like, I have an opening and I thought of you,
Wow, that's
right?
so
To do this
cool.
training with me, right? And I had resistance at the beginning. I was like, oh man, I'm on this coaching path and like I'm doing already all these things. I don't know if this is the right thing for me. So I was like, I was meeting him with
Yeah.
resistance, but he was just really leaning in and he was like really encouraging me to do this because he was seeing like, how I was showing up in the breath. So he could recognize how I could be if I continue on this path,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So I couldn't see that at that time, but he already could because he's been doing this for so many
Yeah.
years, right? So yeah, it's been wild. I went into the training and it was literally one of the best experiences of my
That's
life.
so cool. And
Um,
like something I've
yeah,
been hearing a lot lately is sometimes you need to accept that whatever you're looking for comes in unexpected ways.
yeah,
So, I mean, in a way, this is still, I mean, not in a way, this is still what you were trying to do with coaching. Like, you're still like
mhm,
helping people through experiencing things and guiding people through these experiences and
yeah,
helping them feel something within themselves. And
Hmm.
then also, it's interesting because I remember in the first episode when you were talking about yoga, you signed up to teach it when you had never even done it. And then now with this
Hmm.
too, you kind
Yeah.
of just jumped in right away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, what I've discovered for myself as well is, it's as you said, um, it does really require that level of openness. It does require that level of um, just as well seeing what comes our way
Mm-hmm.
and as well recognizing, oh, is there something
Yeah.
here? And not necessarily being so transfixed what the mind wants, being so one-pointed towards a
Yeah.
certain
Mm-hmm.
goal, but rather just allowing as well to be influenced, allowing to be shaped by our experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's this dance, it's this relationship between life and us, right? Coming together in so many ways. That's the way I really see
Yeah,
this.
I feel like you can miss out on so many opportunities because you're so focused on something you think you might want, or you're focused on a singular vision of how to get what you want that you don't really see the other
Exactly.
ways.
Exactly. Yeah. And, what I've really discovered in myself in so many ways is that can be one of the most debilitating states to be in,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be so transfixed, to be so goal oriented that you're not seeing anything. It's like when you're, for example, let's say you see a racehorse, they have these blinders, right? That where they can't actually see what's left or right. This is the way I envision it. And see what's left or right
Yeah,
with us. So we actually miss a lot of opportunities in that moment.
for sure. Man, that's so cool. So, I mean, right now, like, how much a part of your life is the breath work aspect?
Hmm. Um, I would honestly say it's around it's around half of it right now. And the beauty of it is I actually connect my coaching with the
Mm-hmm.
breathwork that I'm
That's
doing,
cool.
right? Because um, there is so much beauty and value to that, right? Because with coaching, it's the way I see it is you're accessing a person through different areas, right? You can either go from the top or you can go from the basement. And so there's so many different areas to bring across the same
Mm-hmm.
message, right? So I can have a coaching session with you. I can have a conversation with you where we're exploring the constructs of the mind. We're exploring your thoughts. We're exploring your beliefs. We're exploring, okay, what barriers are there? Or we can drop into a breathwork session. You get into this non-ordinary state of consciousness, and I will already see, you know, just with your breathing pattern, where you're
Mm-hmm.
at, right? If you're maybe in this deep state of anxiety because you're not able to really find grounding in your
Yeah.
life. So there is different ways of kind of coming to the same destination. And so the beauty that I now really find is actually connecting these two modalities together to really facilitate powerful, powerful transformation.
That's cool. I mean, yeah, I don't think I've ever heard either of people that do those two things together because I see a lot of separate, but this seems like a very
Great.
unique combination.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. And if like it is in many ways as well because I bring as well my understanding of different fields together and as well, my understanding from the yogic philosophy and yeah, like different, I would say, explorations as well, like neuroscience as well. So there's different modalities that I'm bringing in. I'm bringing in modern science, and then I'm bringing in as well ancient wisdom teachings
Mm.
together. And then as well, yeah, bringing all these modalities together, like something as well that I've explored a lot is much more um, going into the body with the people I work with,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've noticed this deeper connection to the body with everyone that I'm speaking to,
Yeah.
right? It's like people have these concerns, people have these fears, or whatever's present. And I notice a lot of the time they don't recognize how this is actually expressing itself in
Mm-hmm.
their body. And, I was actually working with a coach for a while. Um, it was like shortly after we did our podcast episode where we started working together. And um, when we started working, she brought to my awareness where I was at with my posture, where I was at with my physical body. And she
Mm,
was
yeah.
showing me how, my shoulders were hunched forwards. I was protecting my heart. I kind of had my head up. So there was this, there was all these ways where I was trying to protect myself. So in that, I've really begun to recognize this like deeper relationship with my body, and yoga has really, supported me in that
Mm-hmm.
process. But I think what I've discovered in myself is like, yes, I can, go into the mind with people and I can explore their thinking, but often connecting to someone's body is actually a much deeper exploration, and it actually goes much faster as well in many ways. So yeah, that's been an interesting exploration for me as well.
Yeah, I could see that for sure because that was something I started to notice in myself when I started doing a lot of work on myself was just
Yep.
being very aware of how my body reacts to certain emotions. And then
Right.
being able to be aware of how my body reacts made it so I could correct it, but also ask myself like, oh, why am I all of a sudden hunching over? And like
Yeah.
why do I have this weird like feeling in my throat? What around me is
Mm.
making me feel this way? So yeah, I
Mm.
mean it's crazy that we do not really realize how much our physical reactions are connected to our emotional reactions or mental
Yeah. Yeah.
reactions as
That's
well.
exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. People always talk about, the mind body relationship. And I think there is perhaps as well this idea that they're separate from each other. But, just from my understandings, from my explorations, what I've really discovered is actually, they're not separate. They're very much interconnected, and they're actually very much one and the same thing,
Yeah, you
just
kind of
expressing itself in different ways.
you need one for the other.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, how do you think you would say, if you could remember, that you
Hmm.
felt then starting this whole journey
Mm.
compared to how you feel now, just within yourself?
Wow. Uh, um, Very, very different. I can tell you that. And the analogy that comes up for me as well in many ways is, for example, if you look at a fish, and let's say you have a little goldfish in a fishbowl, right? So it's swimming in the water, and it's just doing its own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you take it out of the water, that is the moment it actually recognizes water, because
Oh,
before
yeah.
that moment it doesn't know what water is, right? As soon as you kind of take it out, it's like that's the moment it recognizes that, right? So why am I bringing this analogy? Well, for me, the understanding that I've come to, and as well, the exploration I really had to go through, was how 1 year ago I was still deeply in this survival state of being.
Mm-hmm.
I was still very much in this place of I'm not safe,
Mm.
but as well, I'm not worthy. So these aren't just beliefs, but actually it's a way of being. It's a way of expressing myself to the world,
Yeah.
right? So for me, with everything that I've done, since coming to Bali, and as well before Bali, um, there's many different modalities I've explored. I just had to go deeper and deeper into myself, and actually have a felt experience of all these things
Mm-hmm.
to actually start discovering a new way. So I think the biggest things that have really changed for me, is this deeper recognition that I am safe,
Mm.
and as well that I'm worthy. I'm worthy of love.
That's important.
And because being worthy of love and self-love are different things for me. I see it as
Mm.
separation between the both. Because before you can actually love yourself, you have to recognize that you're worthy of it. So
Interesting.
one has to have the felt recognition that I am worthy of love, right? And so for me, giving love to oneself is much more of an active way of being,
Mm-hmm.
but be, feeling inherently worthy is much more of a it's the foundation,
Hmm.
right?
I always go
So
kind of
this is
opposite
the
with that.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But sorry to
Yeah, I mean,
interrupt.
sure. No, absolutely. I mean, all I'm going to say is there's different understandings of
Hmm.
this, right? So this is my truth at this moment.
Yeah.
It could be that this changes in, 1 month from now.
Yeah.
You may ask me the same question again, and it's going to be a completely different recognition, right? So I want to honor your truth and, as well, just recognize it's kind of where I'm at right now. Um, yeah, it's so this has kind of been my exploration in many ways, I would say, since the past year.
I feel like I can definitely see it too because I mean, before we recorded the first episode, I did a coaching
Right.
session with you, and then we had another session before this episode. And
Exactly.
I mean, I would say with the first one, you still seemed very
Mhm.
comfortable in that role, but
Yeah,
then I don't know, there's just more sense of, I don't know how to explain this. It just seemed even more natural for you now.
sure.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it felt like you didn't even really have to think about anything you were asking
Mhm.
me or anything you were telling me. It really just kind of it's just a part of who you are now.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, thanks for speaking to that.
Yeah, of course.
What comes up for me is this element of, yeah, like, of course, I've had, now 1 more year of
Mm,
experience with this. So there's a quality of skill that as well came across, but as well, I have, because I have this deep felt sense of safety and worthiness in myself, I have let go of a lot of behaviors that were not serving me and were actually coping mechanisms. They weren't who I was.
mm,
So there in the past, there was always this quality of um overexertion and as well going above and beyond and actually trying to be more than who I was actually being at that time. So it actually took away from who I was authentically being at that time, if that makes
no, that makes
sense.
total sense.
So I was, yeah,
Mm,
great. So there was this quality of, like this people pleasing behavior that was coming through.
mm,
There was a quality of neediness coming through in the way I was being because I was coming from this deep felt sense of lack within myself,
yeah, almost like trying to
right?
prove something.
So exactly. That was one of my biggest understandings of life before that. I need to prove myself,
Yeah,
right? I need to prove to myself and the world that I am worthy,
I completely
right?
relate to that.
But and yeah, absolutely. I can imagine a lot of people can
Mm,
relate to this. This is as well in so many ways how we get conditioned.
yeah.
This quality of that we're not good enough. And so because we're not good enough, I have to prove
Hmm.
myself,
But
right?
especially
But
you being kind of in that role of authority, almost like trying to help guide someone,
yes,
of course, you would feel the
yes.
need to kind of prove your role.
Hmm. Sure. I agree with that. And that was an understanding that I had at that time, but I realized it was not serving me.
Hmm.
And this is not an understanding I come from anymore
Yeah.
because it takes away from intimacy. It takes away from
Yeah.
relationship. And this is something I've really been exploring a lot in so many ways. For someone who does coaching, for someone who facilitates any form of transformation, relationship is incredibly important,
Hmm.
right? There is what's required is this deep felt sense of trust and this deep felt sense of I am connected to this human being, right? So any action that we do that is not necessarily coming from a clean space, that is not coming from our authentic being, takes away from intimacy. It takes away from connection, and it takes away from the quality of change that can be created. So that was something I really had to explore in myself and really actually, yeah, find a new way
Yeah.
within all of this.
You know, it's so interesting that even though the example I'm about to bring up is so different, it sounds
Mm-hmm.
exactly like how I felt because with starting
Sure.
this show, it was kind of that way for me too because
Mm-hmm.
I think I was so caught up in trying to be entertaining or like trying to ask good questions or again trying
Mm-hmm.
to prove myself to be in this
Yep.
position to be hosting this and have my own show and do all these things that I let
Yep.
that take away from the connection of the conversation and I let that kind of
Yeah.
take away from me really being in the moment with these people I was speaking to And I mean, I
Hmm.
don't know if that's obvious to people when they listen, but for me, when I listen
Hmm.
back, I can really tell. And once I stopped trying to control everything and stopped trying to prove myself and just spoke to these people, everything
Yeah.
just, it felt better, it flowed better. And I feel like everything improved after that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for speaking that. I 100% agree in so many ways. Um, it's interesting, as you were sharing these things, the image that came up for me is, it was this quality of, you know, I need to be entertaining. I need to do all these things because perhaps there is this underlying belief that who am I to do this
Yeah,
podcast,
definitely. There was for
right?
sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So with that, we adapt. We don't, you don't show up as Drea. You don't show up as who you authentically are,
Yeah.
as who you really
Mm-hmm.
are. Right. So people will not perhaps speak to it in these words that I'm saying right now, but unconsciously they may recognize something. There is perhaps this feeling of, I don't know if I vibe with this. I don't know if I connect with
Mm-hmm.
this. This is perhaps the way they would put it in their words, but that's unconsciously what it is. And for me, the mind-blowing experience or the mind-blowing understanding is that the one that chooses, if you are, worthy to do this podcast or not,
Yeah,
is you,
exactly.
right? It's not another person. It's not coming from the outside, or, everyone telling you, oh yeah, Drea, yeah, you're doing great. You should
Mm-hmm.
do this. No, it comes from a felt sense of, you know what, I can do
Yeah.
this. And like this is what I really want to do. And as soon as you show up from this way of being, people unconsciously already agree to it. They already unconsciously say, oh, yeah, of course that's what she's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Of course that's what she's meant
Mm-hmm.
to do. Right. So it starts with us. It starts from giving ourselves this
Oh,
permission.
100%.
That's what it really
Mm-hmm.
is. This giving oneself the permission to do that. And that's the exploration I had to go through as well, to give myself permission to do what I
Yeah.
wanted to do in so many ways.
That's amazing. And yeah, it shows, honestly. And yeah, it's just like how you said, once you start believing it in yourself, that's when everyone else starts to see it. And that's the irony of you no longer need to show that to other people. And that's when other people start to see it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think a very tangible example to what we're speaking about is like this quality of relating. Let's say, you're dating someone and, you're meeting someone for the first time. It's like, I think we've all had this felt experience. If someone, comes from this place of, oh, I need this person, and this feeling of like needing this is coming through, well, it pushes the other person
Mm-hmm.
away. It
Yeah.
scares the other person. There is this quality of, oh, this person is dependent on me, right? That pushes people
Yeah.
away. But if it comes from this place of, not needing it, and rather just coming from a place of enjoyment and playfulness, and just wanting to explore with another person, well, that's a much more attractive quality to actually
Yeah.
be in. So, and this is as well the analogy that I kind of bring to a lot of the people that I work with when we're exploring this quality of, scarcity, and as well when I see people falling under these tendencies of needing to prove themselves, or people pleasing, or as well kind of feeling like they're a fraud, that they're not good enough to do what they actually want to
Mm-hmm.
do. um, so yeah, that's what's coming up for me right now.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that because I don't know, I love seeing that type of change in people, especially because obviously that's just going to serve you and that's just going to help you serve other people in that as well.
Yeah,
And so you
exactly.
were saying too that there's been a lot of new experiences that have you just like really charged up today. So, like, what is it that
Yeah.
you've been experiencing lately that has you in this mood?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess I just see a lot of changes in my life, especially um, around the quality of, relationships, I would say. And in so many ways, what I've recognized in myself is the place as well that I'm coming from when I'm relating to another person.
Mm.
You know, it comes from this place of, actually very similar to, you know, what we were speaking about before. It comes from this place of curiosity. It comes from this place of, I'm feeling really whole, and it comes from this place of fun, enjoyment, and playfulness. And that's kind of the approach that I'm taking towards life right now. It's,
Love that.
yeah, the image that comes into mind for me is I'm in relationship to life, right?
Hmm.
Before that, there was a disconnect between life. And I know this may sound a bit esoteric and a bit woo-woo, but in so many ways, that was really the exploration I had to go through in so many ways. It was this coming to the space of, you know, curiosity about life, and
Mm-hmm.
actually, you know, starting my day, and from this understanding, you know, what will come my way today, and as well coming from this place of receivership. So allowing myself to receive anything that comes my way, right? So taking that in like example of, you know, meeting my breathwork practitioner and meeting my breathwork teacher and him telling me you should do this training, you know, was I able to receive that in that moment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
life is a continuous relationship with me. So I think there is this deep felt sense of, you know, I'm continuously relating with life, and there is this feeling of, you know, enjoyment and excitement towards that. But then there is as well this deeper felt sense of creativity in life. There's this deep felt sense of um, I'm a creator of my own life. And so every experience that I'm going through, I see it from a quality of possibility. I see it from this place of, I can create something here, right? So where in the past I would have, and this is, you know, I think this is as well in many ways what the understanding that I bring people to in so many ways, because I think in many ways people get caught up that they're victims of their own circumstances. So
Yeah.
let's take a simple example of that, or you know, you are perhaps, you know, stuck in this job and you don't have enough money, and people get into a space that their circumstance tells them, gives them information about who they are and about their worth and about their life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, that's a very reactional, that's a very passive way of living life. You know,
Yeah.
the understanding that I want to bring people to in many ways is that they're actually creators of their own lives, right? They don't need to use circumstance to actually tell them about who they are. They don't need to use circumstance to tell them how good their life is, but rather they can create that from a moment to moment basis. And this is something this is exactly what I'm exploring. This is really what excites me and revs me up about life right now, that I can create myself from a moment to moment basis, right? I don't need to use my past experiences. I don't need to use who Alex used to be to define who I am going to be today,
Mm-hmm.
right? That Alex from 6 years ago, he was a very shy person. He was very anxious. He felt like he was no one loved him, right? He felt like he needed to hide. Well, yeah, well, I could use my past experiences. I could use all of that, well, to actually let me know about who I am, to define that, or I can just decide to, you know, start from today, to start from, you know, a clean space.
Mm-hmm.
So the understanding that is well bring through with a lot of clients is this idea of, you know, the blank canvas, right? Imagine if today was this place, you know, you have this blank canvas in front of you, right? And you're a painter. You know, what is it that you want to paint today,
Mm-hmm.
right? So with this understanding, this is how I show up in my life. How do I want to show up in life? Who am I today? You
Yeah.
know, what qualities does this person have today? What am I creating? You know, am I going into a coffee shop and as well just creating from that space? Or am I just, you know, just letting things come to me, right? If I want to have a conversation with someone, if I see someone as interesting, I will go up to them and I will let them know, hey, I find you interesting, you know, and then just start a conversation there and just go from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is so much possibility. There is so much opportunity out there,
Yeah.
right? And this is the understanding that I'm now taking into my life. So yeah, this was a bit of a longer story, but I hope
No, it's
it
great.
kind of brings understanding to the way I feel about life in so many ways.
No, I love that so much, especially because I feel like, like how you mentioned when people see their circumstances in life, they tend to just think of, oh, these things are all happening to me. And when you switch that
Mm,
perspective from things happening to me to, what can I do with the things around me? What can I
mm,
create? How can I change things? It changes
yep.
so much in your life, and it changes how you experience your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is this analogy between being a victim or an owner of your life.
Mhm.
So, the victim would usually use their circumstance to define who they are and as well what their life is about. The
Mhm.
owner takes responsibility of their life. They actually recognize, I am actually a creator of my life, right? So any experience can happen, right? But the way I respond to it, and that's the critical thing, the way I respond to it and what I'm going to do with that, that's up to me,
Yeah.
right? And as soon as you honor that, as soon as you embody that understanding that the way I respond to a circumstance, the way I act from that place, that's up to me,
Mhm.
right? And that's really a very, very empowering place to come from.
I think that's like a line I've been teetering lately. Well, not so
Mm-hmm.
much right now, but like within the past few years of trying to kind of figure out why I react to certain things the way I do, or like what happened in my
Yep.
life before that caused me to be this way,
Sure.
and things like that. I definitely was
Sure.
stuck in a mindset for a little while of, oh, well, that's why I am the way I am. And that's just how it is. Like, oh, this thing happened. Well, now I'm
Yeah.
like this.
Sure.
And I've been kind
Yep.
of trying to find the balance of figuring out why I am this way or do these things and knowing that I can
Mm,
change it, that it's not something that's
exactly.
going to continue to affect me for the rest of my life if I don't want it to.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. And let me give you a live example that I actually experienced, yesterday, right? I was in a yoga class and the room was filling up. It was a very popular class, right? So I asked one of, the people there who was, attending the class if she would move her mat so we could create a bit more space for other people that are coming,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, I could see that she was in this total space of, I am preparing myself for the practice. And there was this quality of, I don't want to receive what you're saying right
Mm-hmm.
now, right? Well, in the past, I would have contracted. I would have I would have used my past experiences to again tell me, well, like, see, Alex, you're not worthy. See, look at that. You're not good enough. Like, look at how she's
Mm-hmm.
responding to you
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, right? Well, in that moment, I didn't see a need to internalize that experience. I didn't need to make it about me in that moment.
Yeah.
I recognize this is all her. This is all her stuff. This is all her projections and her anger about, whatever it is. Like, I'm not going to look into the meaning that she may have in her life,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I can come from this clean space of just expressing, my desire or expressing a request. But, her response to it, I don't need that to affect me in that way
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, that's interesting too, because something that could seem like so small, I feel like a lot of us could take, like you said, normally you would internalize it. And I'm the same way, like
Mhm.
something small of someone saying something to me a certain way, or maybe I said
Sure.
something to someone a certain way I didn't mean to, and I'm just like
Yep.
thinking about it forever of like, oh
Yeah.
no. But
Yeah.
yeah, little things like that, like you can learn to let go of and learn to either not affect you or affect you differently than before.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming full circle to everything that we've already talked about, it comes that deeper felt sense of embodiment of, this is not about me. This is not about, that I am, unworthy or anything like that. Comes from this place of, you know, having a deeper felt understanding of that in oneself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've done the work, because I've gone through this um, deep internal process of recognizing, I'm worthy, I'm safe.
Yep.
I don't need to go back into that
Yep.
space of feeling like I'm not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I got a certain response from something.
Yeah.
So I think this really is the work that's being asked to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. And I mean, something I said before, like way back then, and continue to say now, is it's nice to feel and be able to see the work that you've done pay off, but then also to know that it's not, well, that it's never done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's incredibly important for me to continue doing this
Hmm.
work, right? Because, I want to be someone who embodies everything that I want to, support another person on, right? So if I'm not doing the work, who am I to do that, right?
That's true.
Um, and another qualities as well is, the deeper I go in this process, the deeper I'm able to support another person,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And that's the beauty of it, because I have recognized that this is my life path, that I want to, support people creating transformation, creating more freedom in their lives. Well, that means I need to continue doing this work with myself,
Hmm.
right? And it's exactly as you said, right? That this path always continues, it never ends, right? And that doesn't have to be something that's defeating. It doesn't have to be a defeating understanding.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that gives me this feeling like I'm not good enough. And like I'm always going to be broken. It's actually not about that at all. No, it's like what I've recognized in myself is, as soon as you kind of do some of the heavy duty work, it's like every experience is more subtle.
Mm. Oh,
And,
yeah, that's true.
you know, yeah, you may still have, certain triggers and, experiences come up. I sure do in so many
Yeah.
ways and daily, right? But it's much more subtle. It doesn't really like throw me off as much
Hmm.
as they used to, right?
Yep.
And that's the beauty of life, you know. There is no destination.
Yeah.
It's just a process,
Yep.
right?
I
It's a journey.
get that for
That's what
sure.
it's about. Yeah,
And so, okay, so this is totally off topic, but
sure.
we were talking about it earlier. So I'm curious
Yes.
about your experience with ayahuasca, you were telling me, just because it's something I've always been really curious about.
Mhm.
So, yeah, take a
Yeah,
complete turn.
absolutely. I would love to share about it. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. Thanks for making this request to speak about
Yeah,
this.
I'm very curious.
Um, sure, absolutely. I'm so yeah,
But what
it'd
was
be an
there something
honor.
that made you want to try that experience? Like, was it something you've
Mhm.
heard about before or someone told you about
Sure.
before?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It would be an honor to share all these things. So, I have been, I don't know if you know Aubrey Marcus, but I've been, like listening to his podcast for many years. He is a very strong supporter of, the psychedelic
Mm.
movement. And as well, I have, yeah, just through my explorations of travels and everything, I have heard over and over again the value, the power of these plants and how they can actually teach
Hmm.
us, right? And so for me, you know, I've dabbled here and there with psychedelics, and I've had profound experiences with them, and as well, I came out of those experiences and recognized, wow, I'm a different
I
man.
hear that a
You
lot.
know,
Yeah.
I'm completely different.
Hmm.
Yes, and so with that, there was much more this felt sense of curiosity, towards these experiences where, in the past, I would have rather pushed that away and it would have scared
Hmm.
me, right? And for me, um, yeah, I think the curiosity to do this came much more, I would say that's my inherent nature.
Mm. Oh,
I
yeah, I can
feel
see that.
there is a secret quality in me. There is this desire to want to experience the depth of life and as well just really understand the human experience in so many
Hmm.
ways. So again, that supports my mission.
Yeah.
It supports how I want to support others. So for me, I feel this quality of, wanting to go through the experiences, wanting to go through the challenges so I can then come out on the other side and actually support other people through that. So that was kind of my desire that came about
Okay. That's
doing
yeah,
it.
because
Yeah.
I've seen different, I don't know, like documentaries and things and heard a lot about it.
Sure.
And also with there being so much study recently around psychedelics like microdosing
Yes.
mushrooms and things like that for a lot of different purposes
Yep.
now. But
Yep.
I mean, I feel like the spiritual aspect or like self discovery aspect is something I hear a lot of
Mhm.
people using it to dive
Yep.
into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a profound healing modality because what it does, very similar to breath work, it actually takes us away from our default mode network. So the default mode network is pretty much if you look at, um, how things are wired in our nervous system, if let's say we have certain experiences and we have created certain understandings of how life is and how people are, well, that puts everything in a box. It limits the experience that we can
Mm-hmm.
have, right? So when we access these, maybe when we do breath work or when we do like plant medicine, it takes us away from that default mode
Yeah.
network and allows us to see life from a place of openness. It allows us to see life from a place of
Mm-hmm.
curiosity. And so with that, one comes out of that experience and recognizes, whoa, like the way I've been living before isn't perhaps not necessarily true,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the beauty
That's
of
also
it.
kind of
That's
scary
the
in a way.
profundity of it. Absolutely is scary. And I can speak to my ayahuasca experience, that it was one of the most scariest things I've ever done in my life.
Really.
And absolutely. And I've done a lot of work up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Really. I've done a lot of the intimate work, and I really felt like I was ready for
Okay.
it. Because first of all, yeah, maybe that's as well important for me before I even speak to this, to share that, I don't condone doing plant medicine as well. I will not encourage it to
Yeah.
everyone. It's
Oh,
not
I
for
wouldn't
everyone.
think so. Yeah.
One has, yeah, one has to really feel the deep calling to do that. One has to feel ready for
Mm-hmm.
that. It can't come from a place of, lack. It can't come from a place of, I am seeking to be healed because I'm
Mm-hmm.
broken, right? I don't think it has to come from a clean place, from a place of curiosity, and as well feeling the deep felt sense of calling to do this
Yeah.
type of work,
That's definitely a good thing to share.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I just want to speak to that before I even share about that
Appreciate that.
experience. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, yeah, again, speaking to it, it definitely was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. Um, because very similar to breathwork, again, it actually shows you what's inside you. It shows
Mm-hmm.
you what's deep inside your psyche. What's always there, but because it's so deep in the unconscious, because it's so deep in our subconscious, we don't recognize it, we don't see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I ended up having two sittings with ayahuasca. I ended up having two ceremonies. They were back to back. And so in my first experience, it was a deep cleansing experience. And it was a very dark experience in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
I really had to go to the depths of this space of losing control. And I recognized how I was still holding on to control in so many
Ooh.
ways in
Yeah.
my life, right? Me losing control in that way was one of the scariest things I had to go through. I felt
Mm.
this deep felt sense of hopelessness. I felt this deep felt sense of powerlessness. And for me, that was my weak spot, because I
Mm.
like
Wow.
I like being in a place of power. I
Yeah.
like being in a place of control, because I am afraid of that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca showed me that. Ayahuasca put me inside. Well, you're afraid of it. You don't want this. Let me just put you inside this,
Yeah.
right? And hours, I had to experience that. I
Wow.
had to, I had to come to terms with it. I had
Mm-hmm.
to find peace with it in so many ways. And I came out of that experience feeling so raw, feeling so vulnerable. And I was terrified to do it again. I really thought I was, gonna lose my mind. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe I did lose a part of my mind. People speak about, as well about this quality of ego death. Well, for me, it was this quality of a part of me died in that moment. The
Mm-hmm.
part of me that needed to pursue control and pursue always needing to have everything figured out, right? And so as I came out of that experience, I had more openness, I had more trust in everything, and I didn't need to control everything. I could just receive. I could just, kind of speaking to everything that we've talked about already, I
Mm-hmm.
could have a relationship with life, right?
Wow.
When I want to control life, I don't have a relationship with life, right? It's like any relationship with another person.
Mm-hmm.
My second experience was a very different one. You know, if
Well,
the
could I
first
ask
experience,
first, why
yeah,
did you do
absolutely.
the second one?
That was part of the ceremony. It was part of the
Okay.
ritual that,
Got it.
one goes. Yeah, it was a two-part ceremony.
Okay.
And often the first experience can be very heavy.
Mm.
It can be, um, because first of all, this external substance comes in and one doesn't have a relationship with that substance yet.
Oh, okay.
And so with that, there is this deep cleansing that happens. People as well always speak about, in the psychedelic space and as well in the ayahuasca space about the purging. Well, the
Oh,
purging
yeah.
can happen in so many ways. Like it can be vomiting, it can be release of fluids,
Mm-hmm.
sweating. That was really what was for me. It was a lot of sweating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I didn't want to do it again. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I would
So the
imagine.
second experience, I was absolutely terrified, and I was even speaking to the shaman. I don't know if I want. I don't know if I can do this again,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she looked deep into my eyes, and just mentioned to me, I trust that this experience is going to be different, right? And
Wow.
so I went into this, and I came from this place of desiring love, desiring softness, and so if my first experience was all about the darkness, the
Mm-hmm.
second experience was all about the light. I have
Mm.
I have never felt, it was the first time in my life where I felt such profound love in my life. It felt like I was in a womb and I was totally carried. And I felt like people speak about ayahuasca like there's this entity. And,
Mm-hmm.
it can, again, it like just listening to this, maybe like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Right. But it's like, when you have the felt sense of experience, you recognize there is this entity there. There is this divine feminine essence that's present in there. This mother energy. People talk about, ayahuasca being the mother. Well, that's what I
Someone
felt in
has
that
said
moment.
that to me before. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Wow.
I can tell you from my felt experience that this was definitely the case for me. I felt this sense of, she had to break up all the walls, but then she was stitching me back together on the second day. She was giving me love. She was giving me nurturing. And it was this deep felt experience of I'm worthy of love, right? Um, that I am enough as I am. And I was telling you, like I'm telling you, I was crying for around 6 hours
Wow.
because I've never felt that in my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And these are the experiences I had to go through to get to the understanding um, that I have today to see myself in the way I do today. I
Mm-hmm.
had to really go through the depth of these experiences because I had such a strong, deep, wired in conditioning that I'm not good enough, right? Well, that had to be taken away from me. That default way of thinking about things, and I had to be shown a new way for me. So I can tell you, the experience was incredibly healing.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've always been so interested in just hearing. I mean, I've only heard personal experiences from you and one other person. Otherwise, it's
Mm,
just from, like I said, documentaries and podcasts and things. And
sure.
I feel like is focused a lot on the purging and kind of the negative and the darkness of it. But getting to hear the personal experiences of the positives
Mm,
it sounds like an incredible experience to have gone through.
yeah, yeah. Like I walked out of that experience feeling deeply emotional, just with the recognition that I'm never going to be the same again. And that's the gift,
And
ayahuasca gave me.
wow. And that's just another thing adding to all this work you've done and to the
Yeah,
person that you've become now. That's incredible.
absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
So, the last thing I want to ask you
Yeah.
is if you could go back and tell yourself then to the person who sat down and recorded your first episode, tell yourself something from now, what would you tell yourself?
Hmm. I think I would just tell him how much I love him, and I would tell him, keep doing the work, brother. You're here. You're right there. And I would just give him a lot of trust, and I would just tell him, be aware you're here. Just continue on this path that you're on. Just trust. You know, life is taking you where you want to go. Just keep going.